Have you ever been completely stopped in your tracks by someone's reaction to a tough moment? Like, you expect frustration, maybe defeat, but instead you get, well, something else entirely.
Hmm.
It brings to mind this anecdote Carol Dweck uses right at the start of her book, Mindset. This 10-year-old wrestling with a difficult puzzle. He doesn't sigh or give up, nope. Instead, he licks his lips and says, I love a challenge.
Yeah, and what's really thought-provoking about that small moment is how it captures these fundamentally different ways we engage with the world.
Yeah.
Not just when things get hard, but like in everything we do.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, Carol S. Dweck's Mindset. Think of this as your guided tool through the book, chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
We're pulling out the key insights, those quotes from Dweck that really land, and the story she uses to, well, make these ideas clearer.
Yeah.
Our goal is to give you a solid, usable grasp of these powerful mindsets and how they shape our lives without making it feel like homework. Perfect for you, the curious listener who wants to understand these concepts and see how they may be applied to your own life.
And, to really get the impact of Dweck's work, it helps to think about where it started. Her research began with a pretty basic question, really. How do students cope when things get genuinely difficult?
Uh-huh.
And what she found was this fascinating split in their underlying beliefs about what they were capable of.
Right. So chapter 1, the mindsets, it really lays the foundation for everything else. It introduces that core idea, the contrast between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Exactly.
And it all comes back to that opening story, doesn't it? You have the one kid who is genuinely buzzing from the difficulty, saying, I love a challenge.
Yeah.
And then the other student working away seriously who looks up and says, I was hoping this would be informative.
Two totally different worlds right there. What's key in those reactions is how they immediately interpret the situation. One sees it as a chance to, jump in and grow. I love a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
The other sees it more passively, like they're just supposed to receive knowledge, hoping this would be informative.
And it's interesting, this idea that intelligence is fixed wasn't always the dominant view. Dweck points to Alfred Binet, the IQ test pioneer. He actively fought against what he called this brutal pessimism.
Ah.
Binet really believed that, and I'm quoting here, with practice, training, and above all, method, we manage to increase our attention, our memory, our judgment, and literally to become more intelligent than we were before. That's quite an empowering thought, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it brings up that critical point about how our innate tendencies interact with our environment. Like the neuroscientist Gottlieb said, it's not just nature or nurture.
Right.
Our genes and our environment are constantly talking to each other. Actually, our genes need input from the environment to even work properly.
Exactly. And this sets the stage for understanding the fixed mindset. This is that deep belief that your basic qualities, your intelligence, personality, your character, they're essentially carved in stone.
Unchangeable.
Yeah, unchangeable.
Yeah. You get a certain amount, and that's your lot. And this belief then creates this constant need to prove yourself. If you think you've only got a fixed supply of good traits, you feel this pressure to show everyone, hey, I've got enough.
So it becomes all about validation, not development.
Precisely.
And it's kind of startling how early these patterns can start. Dweck tells her own story from 6th grade, this teacher, Mrs. Wilson.
Oh, the IQ seating chart.
Yeah, seating kids strictly by IQ score. Imagine that.
Yeah.
It created this classroom where the main goal wasn't learning. It was just look smart, don't look dumb.
The pressure must have been intense. Talk about stifling.
Totally.
And when someone with that fixed mindset inevitably hits a setback, a bad grade, not getting the job, whatever feels like failure, their reaction can be pretty extreme.
Mm-hmm. They use words like feeling like a reject, a total failure, even slime. It's not just about the event. It becomes this huge judgment on their whole worth.
It defines them in their eyes.
Yeah. And their thoughts about their life in those moments, super dramatic. My life is pitiful, nobody loves me, life stinks, I'm stupid. It's like a small trip triggers a massive identity meltdown.
That really shows the fragility of the fixed mindset, doesn't it?
Okay.
Because if abilities are fixed, failure isn't just an outcome. It's proof positive that you're fundamentally flawed.
There's no room to learn from it.
Exactly. It just confirms your worst fears about not being good enough.
Okay, so let's flip the coin. The growth mindset. This is the belief that your basic qualities can be developed through effort, good strategies, learning, persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people with this mindset, they don't necessarily like failing, who does? But their reaction is completely different. They might be disappointed, sure, but they don't see it as a final verdict on who they are.
It's information, not a label.
Yes. They're much more likely to embrace the challenge, to keep going when things get tough. They're the ones thinking, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn? What can I do differently? Maybe I need to work harder on the next paper or talk to the professor.
They see a problem to be solved.
Not a judgment on their soul.
The key difference is that orientation towards, actively engaging and learning. Fixed mindset leads to avoidance and self-blame. Growth mindset fuels resilience. This belief that effort can actually make things better.
And Dweck makes it clear this isn't just about school smarts. This fixed versus growth thing applies everywhere: art, sports, business skills, even personal qualities.
Like personality.
Yeah, she includes these agree-disagree statements in the book about whether personality can change. It really makes you think how often we put ourselves or others in these fixed boxes, like, oh, that's just how they are.
And that kind of thinking can have real consequences. There was that study at the University of Hong Kong.
Oh, right, with the English course.
Yeah. Students who weren't great at English, which was crucial there, were way less likely to sign up for an improvement course if they had a fixed mindset.
Even though it would help them.
Exactly. They avoided the very thing that could help them grow because it might expose that they weren't naturally good at it.
Wow. That speaks volumes. It's like the fear of looking bad now is stronger than the desire to actually be better later.
Mm.
And this difference shapes our priorities too, right? Dweck asks, what would you rather have? Easy success and validation, or challenges that lead to growth, even with setbacks?
The fixed mindset often leans towards validation, that constant reassurance.
That prove it.
Whereas the growth mindset actually seeks out the challenges, sees them as necessary for getting better. And this even affects relationships.
How so?
Well, someone with a fixed mindset might look for a partner who just constantly praises them, tells them how amazing they are.
Puts them on a pedestal.
Kind of. But someone with a growth mindset, they're more interested in a partner who supports their development. They don't think they're already perfect. They want someone who encourages them to learn and evolve.
Okay, that makes sense.
Dweck shares this story about a growth mindset woman married to a fixed mindset man. It really highlights the communication problems. Every time she tried to raise an issue or suggest a change, he felt totally criticized, like his whole self was under attack.
So instead of fixing the problem,
She had to spend all her energy fixing his bruised ego first. It shows how these mindsets can clash, especially in close relationships.
right, okay, so that sets the stage. Let's move into chapter 2, inside the mindsets. This is where we see how these beliefs play out more.
Exactly. And it kicks off with a great example of the growth mindset, Mia Hamm.
Oh yeah, the soccer legend. What she said about always playing up. That really stuck with me.
Right. She deliberately sought out tougher competition. Older players, boys' teams, the best college teams. Why? Because, as she put it, each day I attempted to play up to their level.
Yeah.
And I was improving faster than I ever dreamed possible.
That's growth mindset in action, pure and simple.
Now contrast that with Dweck studies where students with fixed mindsets faced harder puzzles. What happened?
They lost interest, right? Wanted to avoid them.
Totally. Enjoyment dropped off a cliff. One kid even made up a story about already owning the puzzles just to get out of doing them. It shows that fixed mindset urge to stay safe where you feel competent.
Whereas the growth mindset kids got more determined.
Yeah, more determined, more interested. Dweck quotes one saying something like, "It's a lot more difficult, but it's what I want to do. So that only makes me more determined. When they tell me I can't, it really gets me going."
That fire, that drive, it really comes down to this difference Dweck talks about, being versus becoming.
Explain that a bit.
Well, the fixed mindset feels this intense pressure to be perfect now. They think one test, one evaluation can define them forever, like that story of Loretta in kindergarten.
Placed in the lower group based on one test at age 5.
Exactly. That label from just one snapshot could stick and shape how she saw herself for years.
And that fear of being judged, like permanently, can also make people quick to judge others.
Yeah.
Remember the Joseph P. Kennedy story?
Dismissing Morton Downey Jr. because of his socks and shoes.
Yeah, a total snap judgment about his entire potential based on something so superficial. That's classic fixed mindset thinking, putting people in boxes immediately.
And this idea of being special in a fixed mindset, it can lead to feeling superior, entitled.
Like you're just inherently better.
Dweck uses John McEnroe as an example here. Obviously, huge talent.
Undeniable.
But his fixed mindset, not loving the learning process, tending to crumble under pressure, arguably held him back from being even greater.
And the flip side of that pressure is devastating. The story of Chef Bernard Luzeau,
Oh, that's tragic. The fear of losing his Michelin stars.
which he saw as reflecting his innate worth. It led him to suicide. A really powerful, sad example of how failure hits in a fixed mindset. It's not just a setback, it's everything.
Even in small things, like that anecdote about fly fishing, the husband and wife.
Right. He had a growth mindset, so he was genuinely happy his wife caught a fish.
But others assumed he'd feel bad.
Yeah, the fixed mindset assumption was, my success is your failure. Like her catching a fish somehow diminished him.
So when things go wrong for fixed mindset folks, what do?
Often, blame and excuses.
Mm.
Think McEnroe again, his long list of reasons for losing. Fever, backache, tabloids, opponent in love. Anything but taking responsibility.
And here's a really key piece. The fixed mindset connects effort with a lack of ability.
The if you have to try hard, you mustn't be smart idea.
Exactly, like true geniuses just do it effortlessly. Dweck even admits thinking that as a young professor seeing colleagues work late, they must not be as bright as me.
It's such a common, often unconscious thought.
But the growth mindset, totally different view of effort.
They see effort as the engine. It's what ignites ability, turns potential into reality. They admire effort.
Like with Seabiscuit and Laura Hillenbrand, that story is all about the power of effort against the odds.
A fixed mindset might just see a broken horse and flawed people trying too hard.
But the growth mindset sees the amazing possibility of change through sheer grit. Now, here's the twist. For someone in a fixed mindset, trying hard feels risky.
Why is that?
Because if you try really hard and still fail, it shatters the illusion of natural talent. You can't fall back on, oh, I didn't really try.
Like Nadja Salerno-Sonnenberg, the violinist, resisting changing her technique.
Precisely. Acknowledging she needed to work hard would mean admitting her brilliance wasn't just innate.
And that fear can stop people from even trying things. Like your dating scenario example, afraid to start something good because it might fail.
Yeah, the fear that failure reflects badly on who you are. But for the growth mindset, the big risk is low effort. The regret is the, what if I'd actually tried?
Like Claire Booth Luce not going back to playwriting because it didn't fit her political image.
Exactly. A fixed idea of who I am limited her potential.
So are these mindsets permanent? Can people change?
That's crucial. Dweck says no, they're not permanent. Mindsets are beliefs, and beliefs can be changed. Often, just learning about the two mindsets is the first step.
Becoming aware.
Yeah. She talks about her students starting to notice their own fixed mindset moments and even playfully calling her out on hers.
Huh. And it's important to clarify, right, that believing in effort doesn't mean blaming the victim.
Absolutely not. Dweck is very clear. People need resources and opportunities. Effort in a vacuum doesn't achieve much. You can't ignore systemic issues.
And growth mindset isn't just about being number one, is it?
Not at all. It's about personal development, loving the process, embracing challenge. You can have a growth mindset and not end up the world champion, and that's okay.
Though she does note some high achievers do have a fixed mindset. They might need constant validation, see themselves as superior, hate mistakes.
Yeah. And the fixed mindset can feel comfortable sometimes. It defines your limits, gives you an out, I'm just not a math person.
But it's a comfort that costs you potential growth.
Like the taxi driver who hated opera but listened anyway because his dad loved it, stuck in a fixed idea.
And Dweck really goes after the lone genius's myth. Edison's light bulb. Huge team effort. Lots of trial and error.
Darwin's Origin of Species. Years of meticulous work. Mozart's early stuff, not genius level yet. It took time and effort.
It's about the journey. She mentions that study with junior high kids, fixed mindset grades dropped with harder work, growth mindset grades went up.
And they explained it differently too. Fixed blamed ability or the teacher. Growth looked at study strategies.
Like in that chemistry course, study growth mindset. Students did better and bounced back from bad tests by changing how they studied, understanding, not just memorizing.
Yeah, and challenging the idea of gift. Michael Jordan wasn't born a superstar, incredible hard work, his dad pushing him in math even.
Or Marva Collins with those kids everyone else had written off. She believed they could learn, set high standards, and they thrived.
Even art. People think you're either born with it or not. But Betty Edwards' drawing book.
The before and after portraits. Amazing proof that skills can be taught and learned.
But being seen as talented can be a burden too, right? Adam Guettel, the composer.
Wishing he could just relax and not have the responsibility of that potential.
Wow. And that research on praising ability versus effort? It's so counterintuitive but powerful. Praise ability, performance tanks when things get hard. Praise effort, kids keep trying and improve.
It sets them up for resilience.
And that study on women in math growth mindset helped them feel like they belonged, helped them resist stereotypes, they supported each other.
That sense of community is key. Dweck wraps up the chapter by admitting even she feels vulnerable to casual judgment sometimes. We all do.
Okay, so you've got the basics and the inner workings. Next, chapter 3, the truth about ability and accomplishment. This one really digs into challenging assumptions, especially in sports.
Oh, yeah. The whole natural talent idea in sports gets a serious look.
Exactly. Dweck starts with Billy Bean, from Moneyball.
Right, the baseball guy. He was seen as a natural.
Total natural, five-tool player. But Dweck argues his fixed mindset actually held back his playing career. He believed talent should be enough. Effort wasn't really required for naturals. So when he struggled,
He didn't know how to fix it constructively.
pretty much. The irony, of course, is that he later became a super successful executive by adopting a growth mindset approach to building a team.
Fascinating turnaround. But we still do it, don't we? Even when we see the effort, we often default to calling great athletes naturals, like Muhammad Ali.
Or Michael Jordan. He's the prime example. We think natural, but the guy was famously cut from his high school team. Didn't get recruited by his top college choice. His success was built on insane work ethic.
Not just raw talent.
Not at all. Same with Babe Ruth. We think natural hitter, but he worked relentlessly on his swing, especially off-season. His biographer said his hitting prowess was sustained, developed. He hated being barred from practice.
Wow. And Wilma Rudolph. Overcoming polio to become an Olympic champion.
Incredible story. Pure hard work and determination. She wanted to be remembered as a hardworking lady. That says it all.
And Jackie Joyner-Kersee, the heptathlon record holder.
Amazing athlete. And she always emphasized the work over innate talent. Said her motivation came from seeing herself improve, getting better through effort.
It's about developing sports IQ, too, isn't it? Some athletes, like Marshall Faulk, talked about studying the game, being curious. They see skills as learned.
While others just call it a gift. But being labeled a natural can be a curse, Dweck argues.
How so?
It can foster that fixed mindset. If you believe you're just naturally good, you might not develop the work ethic or the coping skills needed when things inevitably get tough. Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, talked about this regarding dyslexia, how being seen as a natural athlete hid other struggles.
Ah, okay. And the fixed mindset can actively interfere with performance under pressure.
Definitely. Dweck uses Pedro Martinez having meltdowns as an example. That inability to cope when things weren't going perfectly.
So what is the champion's mindset that it's not just talent?
Mm-hmm.
Dweck talks about character, right? Like those sports writers describing the Yankees.
Yeah, character. She illustrates it with Pete Sampras at Wimbledon, digging deep mentally to overcome a tough spot in the final. That wasn't just talent, it was learned mental toughness.
Like Jackie Joyner-Kersee talking herself through an asthma attack to win.
Exactly. She called it her eureka moment at the Junior Olympics, realizing mental toughness was key. Both she and Mia Hamm stressed how crucial the mental side is.
It's a skill you build.
And coaches play a huge role. John Wooden recognizing potential in Eddie Puwalski, giving him a chance in a big game that's seeing potential for growth.
Contrasting Tiger Woods' ambition with his focus on personal best, making practice fun.
Yeah, competing against the 12-year-old version of himself in his mind, that's internal motivation, not just beating others.
Or Mia Hamm saying being a winner means walking off knowing you gave your absolute all.
It shifts the focus from just superiority, McEnroe's big head, as Dweck calls it, to effort and personal growth. Failure becomes motivating, informative.
Not defining.
Right. Michael Jordan learned this when he came back to basketball. Tried to coast on talent, didn't work. Had to recommit to the preparation. Remember his Nike ad about all the shots he missed?
Embracing failure is part of the process.
Sure.
Like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when dunking was banned.
Yeah. Instead of complaining, he developed his skyhook through sheer hard work, thanks to Coach Wooden's growth mindset influence.
Contrast that with McEnroe wanting his friend Vitas Gerulaitis to lose because he couldn't handle losing himself. Setbacks label you in a fixed mindset.
Whereas Tiger Woods was always tinkering, experimenting, focused on a long-term plan for improvement. It wasn't just about winning the next tournament.
And it's about teamwork versus trying to act like a superstar to validate your talent.
That's a big one. Dweck tells the story of Patrick Ewing and the Knicks, how that somebody-nobody syndrome, the fear of not being the star, might have cost them championships. Isis Tillis expressed that same fear.
Compared to Candace Parker's attitude, just focusing on giving her best effort for the team.
Total growth mindset. So the chapter really pushes you to think about character in sports not as something fixed, but as something built through embracing learning and improvement.
Okay, moving on from sports. Chapter 5 tackles business, mindset, and leadership.
Right. And here, Dweck leans on Jim Collins's research from good to great. Remember the level 5 leaders?
The ones who prioritize the company over their own ego. Humble but driven.
Exactly. Contrasted with leaders with gargantuan personal ego, Dweck uses Leah Kaka as an example. Huge initial success, saved Chrysler, right?
Yeah, legendary turnaround.
But then she argues his fixed mindset took over. He became focused on his own fame, his image, neglected long-term investments for short-term glory.
So the fixed mindset hinders long-term success, even after initial wins.
That's the argument. It fosters that genius with 1,000 helpers model where the leader is the font of all wisdom.
Versus the growth mindset approach of building a truly great team.
Right. Iakaka's story is fascinating. Fired dramatically from Ford, becomes a hero at Chrysler, but then that need for validation seems to resurface.
And then there's Al Dunlap, Chainsaw Al.
Oh, classic fixed mindset cautionary tale. His self-worth was totally tied to shareholder profits, proving himself constantly. He even said so.
And his tactics at Sunbeam were brutal.
Right, totally destructive.
Yeah.
Inflating revenues, firing anyone who questioned him. It all imploded spectacularly.
Similar themes at Enron with Ken Lay, the culture of genius.
Yeah, where the leadership looked down on the people actually doing the work. That quote from Rich Kinder questioning their self-deception is chilling.
So what's the alternative? The growth mindset leader.
Think Lou Gerstner turning IBM around. He deliberately rooted out the smugness, the elitism, and focused on teamwork and facing reality.
Or Anne Mulcahy at Xerox,
Ugh.
facing a massive crisis.
Huge crisis. But she dug in, focused on learning the business inside out, made tough decisions, and fostered collaboration. It was about development, not just being the smartest person in the room.
That avoids the dangers of groupthink, too. Fixed mindset leaders often discourage dissent.
Like the Bay of Pigs invasion analysis or Enron again, everyone's afraid to challenge the genius leader. Schlesinger's quote about Kennedy's advisors is telling there.
Contrast that with David Packard at HP, actually rewarding an employee who disobeyed orders to develop what became a successful product.
That's fostering growth. Managers with a growth mindset, Dweck says, focus on developing their employees. They coach, they welcome feedback. It's learnable, too. Workshops can teach this.
And it extends to the whole organization, a culture of genius versus a culture of development.
Exactly. Based on studies of Fortune 500 companies, the overall mindset of the company culture makes a huge difference in employee morale, innovation, and long-term success. The chapter really makes you reflect on your own workplace.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Chapter 6, relationships, mindsets in love or not.
Ah, yes. This hits close to home for many people. Dweck starts with that common experience of sudden heartbreak. Both mindsets experience it, obviously.
But they deal with it differently.
Totally differently. For the fixed mindset, rejection feels like a permanent judgment. You're labeled unlovable with flashing neon lights.
Ouch. And the reaction is often.
Lashing out. Blame. Defensiveness. Because if your qualities are fixed, rejection means you're fundamentally flawed, and that's unbearable.
And it's weird, isn't it? We accept needing to learn skills for work or sports, but often expect relationships to just work. Like, we don't need to develop relationship skills.
Right. Like Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence, that stuff matters. The fixed mindset often expects a fairy tale, find the perfect match, and it's effortless forever.
Like Charlene and Max in the book, that intense initial spark, the belief they'd found the one perfect, effortless match.
Yeah, versus the growth mindset view, which understands that, as Daniel Weil suggests, choosing a partner is choosing a set of problems you're willing to work through together.
It requires effort and skill development.
And communication. Dweck uses the story of Brenda and Jack, the boring stories incident.
Oh yeah, where they immediately jump to blaming each other's character. Brenda is boring, Jack is selfish.
Instead of seeing it as a communication breakdown, something they could potentially work on, the fixed mindset jumps straight to negative labels.
It's that judgment again. Dweck mentions loving those "can this marriage be saved" columns as a kid, that fascination with fixing things.
And sometimes the fixed mindset turns initial positives into negatives. Ted and Karen's story.
Where everything they first admired in each other became a source of irritation.
Yeah, because the fixed mindset tends to blame the partner when things go wrong, instead of looking at the dynamic, the interaction between them.
Dweck even shares her own strategy, right? Using Maurice to deflect blame.
Yes. Acknowledging her own lingering fixed mindset tendencies. And her realization about her relationship with her mother focusing on controlling her actions, her half, regardless of her mom's response. That's growth-oriented.
And insecurity plays a role too. The story of Susan and Martin.
Where Martin felt diminished when Susan shone or connected well with others. Classic fixed mindset insecurity. Her success felt like his failure.
Diminishing your partner's light isn't exactly supportive.
Not the best strategy. Good relationships, Dweck says, involve developing skills to handle differences, feeling like you're on the same team, even when you disagree.
Like Laura and James, where his growth mindset helped her learn to manage her temper over time. It took work, but it was possible.
Exactly. And even breakups look different. For the growth mindset, it's painful, sure, but it's also a chance to learn and grow for the future, not just proof of being inherently flawed.
That extends to friendships, too. Sherry Levy's study.
Right. Fixed mindset people feeling threatened by a friend's new relationship, and those diminishers.
People who build themselves up by putting others down.
Textbook fixed mindset behavior. Dweck's dream about the friend taking her prized possessions really captures that feeling of being undermined.
And shyness. How does that connect?
Fixed mindset can fuel shyness because you're terrified of social judgment. Every interaction feels like a test you might fail. George, the client Scott Wetzler described.
Always worried about being evaluated.
And bullying.
Dweck links it directly to the fixed mindset. The bully needs to establish superiority, prove they're somebody by making someone else a nobody. It gives them a self-esteem rush.
And the fixed mindset kids, when imagining being bullied, immediately thought of violent revenge.
Wow. But there are growth mindset approaches to tackling bullying.
Yes, people like Stan Davis and Haim Janot use these principles. Janot's letter to a bully is about understanding and changing behavior, not just labeling.
And his story about Bruce in kindergarten, creating a non-judgmental space, it all comes back to fostering growth, not judgment.
Which leads us perfectly into Chapter 7, parents, teachers, and coaches. Where do mindsets come from?
The source. The messages we receive as kids.
Huge impact. Dweck emphasizes how parents send powerful messages, often without meaning to, especially through praise.
Praising intelligence or talent backfires.
It can, yeah. It sends the message, you are smart. So if the kid then struggles, the implication is, uh-oh, maybe I'm not smart. It creates a fixed mindset. If I don't learn quickly, I'm not smart.
She shares quotes from people looking back, right?
Yeah.
Saying that praise for being smart made them afraid of challenges.
Exactly. A mother reflecting, a Columbia student. It made them reluctant to risk not looking smart. Dweck admits it's hard not to praise ability. Even she slips up.
So what's the alternative? Process praise.
Yes. Praising effort, strategies, focus, persistence, improvement, focusing on the process of learning, not the fixed trait.
Like with Elizabeth, the gymnast. Her parents praised her intelligence before a meet.
Which just ramped up the pressure. Dweck suggests alternatives focusing on her hard work, her love for gymnastics, and the growth-minded dad's response when she didn't win. You need to work harder to earn it. Realistic, focused on effort.
Contrast sharply with coaches complaining about uncoachable athletes.
The ones who only want praise for their talent and resist feedback, that's fixed mindset. Constructive criticism is feedback that helps you improve. Judgmental criticism just labels you.
Like Billy's dad yelling about sloppy homework versus helping him figure out how to organize it.
Right, or the story of Philip spilling nails and his dad's reaction. The nails spilled, I'll pick them up. No blame, just addressing the situation. Growth-oriented.
And kids with a fixed mindset often feel constantly judged by parents. Even offers of help feel like proof they're inadequate.
That's really sad. And the study on abused children learning to judge harshly.
Yeah.
Even non-abused kids showing less sympathy. Judgment breeds judgment.
Does punishing really teach kids to think ethically? I'll teach you a lesson.
Dweck questions that. Does it teach problem solving or just fear and resentment? The story of Sandy, the brilliant student crushed by labels until Dweck intervened. It's about the tragedy of limiting potential with fixed thinking.
Or the parents obsessed with Harvard, preventing their kid from going to Stuyvesant.
Hmm.
Love on our terms.
Yeah, the fixed mindset kid feels loved only if they fulfill the parent's dream, not for who they are or what they're learning.
And this all applies to teachers, too.
Absolutely. Teachers need to foster growth. Lowering standards doesn't build self-esteem. Dweck argues it just creates poorly educated, entitled students.
Great teachers believe in growth. They're fascinated by learning.
Like Marva Collins again, working with kids others had given up on, believing in their potential. Teachers don't have to love every student, Dweck says, but they have to care about every single one's development.
Contrast that with fixed mindset teachers who judge early and give up on the dumb ones. They think achievement is static.
And coaches, Bobby Knight.
Fixed mindset example. Motivated by intimidation, fear. Mixed results, often negative impact on players personally. Isaiah Thomas's quote about him is very ambivalent. Versus John Wooden, growth mindset coach, focused on analysis, motivation, helping players reach potential in basketball and life. His championship record speaks for itself.
And that story about Wooden pulling Fred Slaughter in the final game, but being worried about the players' feelings. That's empathy. Focus beyond just winning.
Pat Summitt, too, with the Tennessee Lady Vols,
Yeah.
emphasizing effort, promising future success even after a tough loss. That's growth.
And it's not just about praising struggling kids, right? You appreciate accomplishments, but tie them to the process that got them there.
Also, growth mindset isn't telling kids they can do anything just by wishing. It means helping them get the skills and resources they need.
Crucially, adults having a growth mindset doesn't automatically transfer it. Kids pick up on actions and overt messages, like praising ability, more than underlying beliefs.
So you have to be intentional about the messages you send.
Very intentional. Which brings us to the final chapter we'll cover today, Chapter 8, Changing Mindsets. Can it actually be done?
The big question. Dweck starts personally here, right? Feeling lost with new challenges.
Yeah, feeling overwhelmed but not asking for help because of that fixed mindset fear of looking incompetent. Even about finding a movie theater.
It's relatable. She brings in Aaron Beck's cognitive therapy work here.
Right. The idea that it's our underlying beliefs that cause negative feelings, and those beliefs can be identified and changed. Beck said you can learn to recognize and dispute them.
So this chapter is about changing that internal monologue from judging to learning.
Exactly. From judge and be judged to learn and help learn. And sometimes just learning about the growth mindset sparks a shift.
Like her students reporting how transformative it was just understanding the concepts.
Yeah. She shares Tony's story went from natural genius, fixed mindset to embracing effort after realizing his self-worth shouldn't hinge on innate talent alone. His internal voice changed.
And there's a brain science basis for this.
Totally. The brain is like a muscle. It forms new connections when you learn. Using it makes it stronger. Dweck talks about her brainology program.
Students learning how their brains work actually changed how they studied.
Yes. Understanding that learning physically changes the brain made them more willing to put in effort. The student quotes are really powerful.
But changing mindset isn't always easy, especially if a fixed mindset self was built as a defense mechanism.
Right. Maybe after a big setback or trauma, letting go of that familiar, even if limiting self can feel scary.
Dweck felt insecure when she stopped tracking her daily successes.
Yeah. When she shifted focus to learning from mistakes instead of constant validation, it felt weird at first. The old fixed mindset tries to pull you back. It resists change.
But change is possible, like the rejected grad school applicant who asked for feedback.
And got in the next year. That took courage, a growth mindset step. Dweck suggests concrete if-then plans to handle specific triggers.
Okay, like the dilemmas she presents.
Yeah.
The struggling quarterback.
Yeah, fixed mindset reaction. Self-torture, avoidance. Growth mindset, okay, what can I learn? How can I adjust? Seek feedback, analyze, practice differently.
Or the partner feeling ignored.
Fixed. Defensiveness, blame, you're too needy. Growth. Explore the fear, what am I really afraid of here? Develop communication skills, understand the partner's perspective.
Raising a precocious child.
Fixed trap. Focus only on the innate talent. Shield from challenges to protect the genius label. Growth approach. Foster a love of learning, effort, tackling hard things, learning from mistakes.
Losing your temper.
Fixed. Feel guilty, deny it, repeat. Growth. Reflect on triggers, develop strategies to manage emotions, learn preventative techniques.
It requires ongoing maintenance, learning from setbacks when you slip back into old patterns.
Definitely. Like the sixth dilemma, trying to change a negative dynamic with a loved one. Wes tried growth strategies but slipped back. It takes sustained effort and often mutual support. Like the Bickersons couple who started working together.
So true mindset change isn't just tweaking behavior.
No, it's a fundamental shift in perspective. Moving from that judge and be judged world to a learn and help learn framework. It takes time, effort.
And watch out for the false growth mindset.
Oh yeah, saying you have it but not actually embracing challenges, learning from criticism or supporting others' growth. It has to be genuine.
So how do people start? Dweck suggests identifying triggers.
What situations push your fixed mindset buttons? And maybe even personifying that fixed mindset voice, giving it a name.
Like our students did, naming their fixed personas.
Yeah. And then learning to talk back to it, educate it, reassure it that it's okay to take risks, make mistakes, and focus on learning. Engaging with that part of yourself, not just trying to suppress it.
That's a really practical approach.
It is. It acknowledges that the fixed mindset is often trying to protect you in its own way. You need to guide it towards a more productive path.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, really
Yeah.
walked through the core ideas of mindset.
We have. The fundamental message is really about the power we have to change and grow, the power of believing in our ability to learn.
Understanding these mindsets gives you a new lens, doesn't it, for looking at your own reactions and maybe understanding others better, too.
Absolutely. It helps make sense of why people react so differently to challenge and failure.
So a final thought for you, the listener, to take away.
Maybe think about one area in your life where you notice those fixed mindset triggers popping up, just one specific area.
Hmm?
And consider what's one small step you could take starting today or tomorrow to approach that area with a bit more of a growth-oriented perspective. What would that look like in practice?
Just a small shift towards learning, effort, or seeing setbacks as information.
Exactly. And of course, we encourage you to dive deeper into mindset itself if this has sparked your interest. There's so much more richness and nuance there to explore and apply to your own goals.